Or let me back up. You can edit this, right? Let's see. I was born in the Netherlands in 1949. My parents immigrated to the U.S. in about 52 and brought me with them. And I grew up in Dallas and went to high school in Dallas, Hillcrest, and then I went to University of Texas at Arlington. After I got out of high school, I worked for a while, and then in 1972, I was drafted into the Army, and once I realized I was going, I joined the Navy instead, because I felt it was safer. You know, in the Army, going to Vietnam, I didn't know if I'd last very long, and as I said, I felt a lot safer on board ship in the Navy. I spent 4 years there, from 72 to 76. I spent the first 2 years I was in Belgium at NATO headquarters, and then the second 2 years I was on board different ships, and then after that when I got out of the Navy, I got a job I went to school to learn how to be a motorcycle mechanic. Then I worked at a Kawasaki shop for about 5 years. I went, like I said, when I got out of the Navy, a friend of mine and I, also a veteran, we went to motorcycle school in Florida and then worked in a Kawasaki shop. And while I was doing that, I also got into some amateur motorcycle racing, road racing. And I still have 3 trophies. I have a first place, a third place, and the cast off my leg from the last race. Always have had some kind of motorcycle. I've always been passionate about them. And then went to work for State Farm. The motorcycle business was so seasonal. It seemed like in the summer there weren't enough hours, to fix all the bikes, and then in the wintertime we stood around and looked at each other and wondering who's getting laid off. And my wife worked for State Farm, and so she brought me an application home and I filled it out. And a year later they called me, and I worked for State Farm for 26 years. When I worked for State Farm, during that time I was an adjuster for the 26 years. And for 4 years, I worked in the Special Investigative Unit, which was very interesting. They investigate arson fires and suspicious claims, things like that. And then for the last 10 years that I worked there, I was in the litigation department. And that was very interesting because I got to go to all kinds of trials and legal proceedings, and sometimes even when the company was being sued, sometimes I got to sit at the table and be the face of State Farm. And I retired. And now I work part-time in a tattoo shop. I had also, just like the motorcycles, always been fascinated with tattoos, and I got quite a few when I was in the Navy. So while I was working at State Farm, when I was in my late 40s, I decided to learn how to tattoo, and so I found a shop where I could do an apprenticeship, where in exchange for doing grunt work like mopping the floors and things, they teach you how to tattoo. And so I did that, like I said, while I was still at State Farm, and then when I retired, I just went to work at a local shop here. While I was still at State Farm and doing that, I worked in a shop at night, completing my apprenticeship and things like that. But now I'm work at a tattoo shop here in my hometown, and it's 4 miles away and very easy. We had another apprentice at the shop where I am now who, when he was just learning how to tattoo, he one day came to the shop very excited because he said he had fixed some prison tattoos on his mother. And I asked why she had, prison tattoos, and he said she'd gone to prison for stabbing his babysitter. So I asked why, and it turned out the babysitter had tattooed him as a baby. And sure enough, he raised up his sleeve and had a faint J on his shoulder, still visible. We live pretty rural out here. My wife has 4 or 5 horses. We have chickens, turkeys, peacocks, all kinds of birds, dogs and cats running around everywhere. We even have a land tortoise that lives in the backyard.
Anything else you can think of?
No, life is good.